Save over $3,100 off MSRP of $42,230 on a 23 Chrysler Pacifica for $39,088. Milton Ruben Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram.
News 12, voted best weather coverage by the Georgia Association of Broadcasters. From the station that's on your side, this is News 12 at 6 o'clock.
A grieving family is calling for whoever killed a 15-year-old to step forward.
So you're not going to turn yourself in. But you reap what you sow.
And next on News 12 at 6 o'clock, the I-Team explains this is just part of a larger tragic trend.
And it's official. Central EMS is now Augusta's EMS provider. We look at how much it will cost the city. But first, heartbreaking testimony from Fort Gordon families on Capitol Hill today about how their homes on post made them and their families sick. From toxic mold to raw sewage dripping from the ceiling. Our I-Team first showed you this video last summer.
Senator Jon Ossoff grilling top Army leaders during today's oversight mission in Washington. Meredith Anderson has been uncovering these problems for us for a decade, and she's here live from the Capitol Rotunda. So, Meredith, what else did we learn from that testimony today?
Richard, Laura, we got some big news today. The Army told us that we can expect construction to begin on a brand new neighborhood at Fort Gordon in the next 60 to 90 days. Now, this neighborhood, this news of a new neighborhood, that is not new news. The I-Team has been telling you about Pine Tree Terrace since April of 2021. But this update, this time frame, this rapidly approaching construction starting, that is a big update. Does Fort Gordon need new construction? Desperately. Senator Jon Ossoff and I were talking about that after today's session. And as much as Fort Gordon needs these new homes, Senator Ossoff says he is very worried about this. We'll get to that in just a moment. But first, obviously, the Army and some pretty top officials were represented at today's session because obviously we got this very big update. Also, three Fort Gordon families were present today, sharing their heartbreaking stories. But noticeably absent from today's session, Balfour Beatty executives. Senator Ossoff invited them, but as you can see, those two chairs sat empty today. A powerful reminder of some empty promises the company has made over the years to get this right. In the recent past, they pleaded guilty to defrauding the military. And in a 2019 interview with the I-Team, they promised they would be more transparent. Well, today, two mothers were brought to tears talking about how Fort Gordon homes affected their children's health. The wife of a drill sergeant talked about her 4 children, all under the age of 11, being sick the entire time they were in their home before they finally moved off post.
Mom, I'm so tired. Mom, my head hurts. Mom, I got a bloody nose at school. The nurse had to help me clean up. Can we go to sleep now? Children of those ages want to be running around. They have an immense amount of energy. When mine were coming home, I'm tired. I just want to lay down.
This isn't ultimately about what happens in rooms of the U.S. Capitol. It's about what happens in the bedrooms of 2, 3, and 4-year-old children on post at Fort Gordon.
And I can tell you that the military families all wholeheartedly agree. Richard, Laura, I spoke with all of them after today's meeting, and they said they leave today with a feeling that something is going to get better, something is going to get done. And they answered that question, the same one that I asked all 3 of them, without hesitation. So that really goes to show you that Senator Ossoff's involvement, be it from being at Fort Gordon last week when they started the first in the nation unit by unit inspections, and even today holding this session 1 year after his PSI hearing, after his investigation, families are seeing some progress for the first time in a long time. And so that is so important, and they are really holding on to hope that something is going to get done. Now, this is important too, because when we were talking about this new construction, right, and I said that Senator Ossoff shared his concerns and some of his worries about that. He said that something came out in the session today when he pressed the Army, and pressed them pretty hard, I might say, about, how are we going to make sure that we are not in the same position with these new houses 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And he said something that the Army had to say really made him stop and think that, we need to do more to make sure that the Army is paying attention and that the Army is monitoring this company and monitoring the construction of this new neighborhood. We'll get into that a little bit more coming up tonight on News 12 at 11. But Richard and Laura, so much happened in this hearing today. And I just have to say, as a mother, hearing these two moms brought to tears about their kids being sick in their homes and feeling so helpless and unable to do anything about it. It was really hard to listen to, but it was really important that they say this in front of two important people in the Army, that this face-to-face meeting happened today because the Army is someone who can do something about it. These two people in there can do something about this.
Certainly not what our military families deserve.
And a lot of work yet to be done as those inspections are just getting underway at Fort Gordon and other places all around the country. Meredith Anderson live on Capitol Hill for us tonight. Meredith, thank you very much. To weather now as we take a live look outside I-20, some big lane shift to talk about coming up for the weekend as we start to use that new middle section going eastbound. But Riley, 16 days ago, Central EMS started services here in Augusta, and today city leaders approved that official contract.
For the remainder of the year, the city will pay Central EMS close to $2 million. It's a large sum, but our Craig Allison says today is being celebrated as a victory.
That's right, y'all. It's about a year ago today that City Commission began the back and forth over an EMS contract with Gold Cross. So to have a new provider, a new contract completed in one day of negotiations has many city leaders breathing a sigh of relief, knowing they have secured the next 5 years of ambulance service. And there are still the terms, and not everyone got what they wanted inside of this deal. The $2.65 million subsidy is a huge increase. And for the city, they're scraping money together from ARP funds, a FEMA reimbursement, the reserve fund, and more. For Central EMS, this big subsidy still doesn't meet their 10% profit they wanted. They got 6.3%, and because of that, they get a 3% annual increase in the subsidy to fight against inflation. Regardless, it was relief on both ends.
It's exciting to see how on such a short timeline we're able to make this transition from one emergency service provider to another who didn't know our roads and our streets and our neighborhoods.
It was a full teamwork, a full effort, and the commissioners heard what that work that was being done, and that they listened and made their decisions. We're certainly thankful for the way it came out.
And when it comes to the product of the deal, Central EMS averaged 14-minute response times for their first 2 weeks that they've been serving here in Richmond County. Their contract expects 12 to 30-minute averages, and for the time being, that's well in line.
Expensive work, but fairly important work for the city of Augusta to nail that down. Greg, thanks.
It's been 12 days since someone killed a 15-year-old aspiring football star on Old McDuffie Road. Still very few details are available to explain what happened that night.
Leaving his family stuck in their grief, calling for Zaire's person's killers to step forward. Tonight, his family sits down with our I-team to talk about what happened that night. Will Rio in the studio now with a look at the numbers and the growing crisis of gun violence impacting our youth.
Yeah, we have 2 different death investigations overlapping right now that involve 13-year-old Buddy Brown and now 15-year-old Zaire Person. With the information we have right now, both seemingly were innocent bystanders in their shootings. The number of young people dying to gun violence is growing, and it's finding its way into the lives of people who tried to run away from it.
He was good grades, athlete, stayed out of trouble, venerable, all the good things you look for in a kid. That was him.
And yet, gun violence in our community knocked on Zaire Person's door unexpectedly.
We don't know why, God may just needed him more than we did here.
Tanya Borders, Zaire's grandmother, says he wasn't supposed to be in Augusta. They had plans to go to South Korea on spring break to visit a family member in the military. Zaire's passport didn't come back in time, so he stayed behind. Family didn't know any of this happened until they got there.
He said, Zaire's gone.
And I said, gone where? You know? And he said, Mom, somebody shot and killed Zaire.
It was at a splat party with toy guns on Old McDuffie Road. The family says they believe there's more than one shooter, and Zaire was not the target.
Somebody's gone that wasn't even supposed to be gone. Like it wasn't even supposed to be him.
Over the last year, the I-Team started tracking homicides and suspicious deaths in the CSRA. Looking just at Richmond County, there's been at least 44 deaths, almost all of them shootings. At least 31 of the 44 victims, or 70%, were male. At least 6 were 18 years old or younger. And at least 17 of the 44 victims were 25 years old or younger.
It's the biggest problem in this community. A lot of the kids, they don't understand that death is permanent. That needs to stop. It needs to stop.
Zaire's mentors say this should be tough on the entire city because this shouldn't happen to anyone.
I'm not going to say turn yourself in because I know if you did this, you don't have a conscience anyway. So you're not going to turn yourself in. But you reap what you sow. Everything comes back to you.
Zaire's funeral will be this Friday. The viewing will be from 3 to 6 at the Celebration of Life Funeral Home. We'll continue to keep you updated as we search for answers in these cases. We will be talking with Sheriff Richard Roundtree tomorrow afternoon.
Looking forward to hearing that. Will, thanks. A wife accused of killing her husband and burying the body in their yard 3 years ago, finally going to trial. We have the latest from court coming up here on News 12.
Plus, one woman fighting to give mothers options about how they give birth, but her mission is facing a big roadblock. We explain in a moment.
And we're going to hang on to plenty of sun over the next few days, and temperatures only getting warmer through the rest of the work week. We'll have that full forecast just after the break.
Find out right now how we can help you. Call all nines.
Wherever I go, I'm always keeping an eye on the power lines. In my home of Puerto Rico, Hurricane Maria showed us what can happen with a weak and outdated power grid. So I became an electrical engineer, and now I work for Georgia Power. We're investing in the latest secure technologies, and we're building the future of energy today. Our customers are counting on us for a modern and dependable power grid, and I'll be keeping an eye out to make sure they get it.
In South Carolina,
Hours and potentially even some thunderstorms. Right now it's kind of timed out to show up around midday for us here locally, and this will continue to move out as we head towards around sunset Saturday evening. And then behind this, we are going to dry out Sunday. It is going to be a little bit cooler, though, behind this front, and we are going to see pretty breezy into the weekend on Sunday. Here's a full look at that 7-day forecast. Gorgeous weather continues for the rest of the work week. For that weekend outlook, just keep an eye on those storm chances Saturday. Luckily, we're back to dry weather again by Sunday.
Last week, we told you about a growing maternal health crisis. 1 out of 5 pregnancies-related deaths is preventable. Black women face an even higher risk.
Our Taylor Martin has been tracking this story. She sat down with one woman pushing to give women the right to choose where and how they give birth, but her plan is facing a big roadblock.
Katie Chubb is a mother, an entrepreneur, and most of all, an activist.
I'm willing to go all the way to Supreme Court to get women rights. The Good Old Boys Club is no match for millennial women.
She's fighting for a freestanding birth center here in Augusta so women can have more options and an experience similar to what she had, giving birth to her first child. With certified nurse midwives, more natural practices, and more affordable births for all women, especially those with low-risk pregnancies.
OB-GYNs can take on the higher-risk patients. We'll take the lower-risk patients. They can focus more of their intentions on the higher risk. Any complications that come up, they can have all of their attention. We'll take the lower risk.
But her roadblock, Georgia's Certificate of Need program requires a transfer agreement with a local hospital. And while she's more than willing to work with hospitals here in Augusta, she can't get permission.
We entered into a contract with a local doctor who has admission privileges at all 3 hospitals, and the government still said no.
Now working with Pacific Legal Foundation, Katie is still pushing to bring the birth center to Augusta, despite the roadblocks.
And at the end of the day, the hospitals view us as competition. So we have been opposed from opening out of competition, not out of safety.
All to bring women another option.
It's women's choice, it's family's choice as well.
And Katie's work continues with Pacific Legal Foundation. She's hoping to fight back against Georgia's Certificate of Need law. A missing persons case turned murder investigation. Now a wife is standing trial after the death of her husband. We have today's developments in court after the break.
First Alert and Associates.
A family has waited more than 3 years for details and closure after a crime that shocked Augusta. Police say Eddie Crew's wife killed him with a horseshoe stake before burying his body in their yard back in 2019. And this week, his wife, Sandra Dales, goes on trial.
Jury selection just wrapped up today, and Hallie Turner is live for us at the courthouse, and she was there for those proceedings. Bring us up to speed, Hallie.
So jury selection began yesterday, but it carried over into today. It's a process that's taken nearly 3 years to get to this point. They were swearing jurors in at the end of the day today, but trial never moved forward, and it won't until tomorrow. Some say time heals a lot, but the Crewy family says it leaves too much to think about, and they just want closure so Eddie can truly lay in peace.
To get closure on that has been, it's been mentally taxing. But I would say that however this trial comes out, guilty or not guilty, I'm finished with it forever and ever.
You know, because of the saying that time heals all, that as time passed it would get easier, but it just gives you more time to think about it and contemplate it and, you know, be tormented by it.
Opening arguments in the trial began first thing in the morning at 9 a.m. and if found guilty, Sandra Dales is facing life in prison with or without parole, on top of 10+ years for concealing the death of her husband, Eddie Crewy.
Certainly been a long time that both sides of this case have been waiting for closure. Thanks for that, Hallie.
New at 6 o'clock, the cat euthanasia program in Augusta will be coming to an end. City leaders just approving the Best Friends Animal Society's trap, neuter, and release program today. Last year, the city euthanized almost 4 cats a day. This 3-year program will save the city money down the road. The average cost to euthanize a cat is around $110, compared to $60 in the catch and neuter plan. Humane Society of Northeast Georgia says this 5-year program, if it succeeds, we're going to see a 92% save rate.
More improvements heading to the Webster Detention Center today. Money approved for 18 units to receive new locks. That is important in the jail. Commissioners also approved funding for the replacement of electrical breakers, toilet flush valves, hot water equipment, and new roofing. In total, $1.6 million will be spent on upgrades. An update on the plan for the Somerville neighborhood to part ways with Augusta-Richmond County and become their own city. After Governor Kemp stopped the movement on Buckhead doing the same thing and separating from the city of Atlanta, local Representative Mark Newton decided to press pause on dropping the bill this session. But even though it's dead in the water this year, local attorney Ryan McLeod says they do plan to push for it again next session.
The Jones Creek Clubhouse has a new owner tonight. Jones Creek Clubhouse LLC purchased the clubhouse, the land, the furnishings from the previous owner. In a statement, the new owners say they're looking forward to investing, repairing, and restoring the historic structure. When it comes to the golf course, they say they hope someone with enough capital will come forward and bring the golf course back to life as well.
Well, the weather is going to be great for golfing through Friday. We're expecting